Hello, my friends. Happy afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a little after 2 o'clock. I'm Pastor Lou Kilgore, and I'm the pastor here in the High Mountain Presbyterian Church community, and pastor for this time of conversation. Set aside 15 to 20 minutes every day. I invite you to do a little check-in to how you're doing, and I try to model it for you. Tell you a little bit about how I'm doing. And so, in doing so, follow a path to well-being, which is more transparent than sometimes we want to be, or that we feel we need to be or can be. So welcome. It doesn't matter if you're a member of the church, there's still such a thing as church membership. But belonging here depends upon engagement and activity. And so you're welcome. I always say, this is your chair. Happy to have you in this conversation. It works at least to keep me aware that you're there. Otherwise, all I have is the eye of the camera looking at me, and that doesn't work that well for me. So, in the beginning of these chats, I sometimes would allow longer spaces of silence. There's a woman on NPR who does I think it's once weekly, maybe daily show on the radio. And in her show, they start now every day with some silence. I grew up in a very loud house because there were so many of us. There were 9 of us for most of my growing up years. And there was very little silence in the house. I never really knew how to be okay with silence, to welcome it. But of course, in my adult life, I've started to seek silence, to seek a place where I'm not making any noise and I'm listening. It may seem strange, but in these conversations, I do all the talking, but I'm trying to accomplish 2 things. I'm trying to accomplish talking, but talking knowing that you're there, and thereby, in the time of talking, be listening for what you're saying or thinking without words, what I'm saying or thinking. Simon and Garfunkel recorded that beautiful, beautiful lyric, listening to the sounds of silence. Silence can be refreshing, it can be welcoming, but it also can be very intimidating. When I was younger and I was teaching elementary school, I kept myself busy. I was single at the time for many years, and kept myself busy by putting together dramatic plays and musicals with the kids from the school. Even later, when my kids were in school, I directed musicals and plays in the elementary school and even in the high school. And I remember one year I was thinking about silence now, and I was putting together the cast for a show on a musical based on the Velveteen Rabbit, which is a really, to me, it's one of my favorite children's stories, and about the journey of becoming a real person, not just a moving around person. And I cast in the lead role a young girl who was very bashful, but I had seen her in different places kind of come out of herself with her friends, and she could be very animated. She could be very full of life and energy, and I just thought, you know, in the right setting in this musical, she might discover her voice and the rest of herself to maybe carry with her back into her life. And so I cast her in this lead role. She was to play the boy, although it didn't have to be a boy, in the story of the Velveteen Rabbit. And she said yes, and she embraced it. She memorized the lines, and she came to the rehearsals, and we were on track for what I thought was a great show. And the night came for her performance. We had two casts, so we had her playing the lead in the one performance, which had happened the night before, and then she was playing the lead in the next night. And she came out, I don't know, about 10%, 20% into the play, into the musical, is where she was introduced. And she had a lot of lines to say, and then she had a song to sing. And she walked out onto the stage to the spot where she was supposed to be, and she froze. She said nothing. And it wasn't, there wasn't a pandemic going on, so we were in an auditorium with what to me felt like a very large crowd of people. Her family was all there, and everyone was full of excitement and expectation, and she introduced us to the sound of silence. That's why I remember it now. Sound of silence. There was some whispering, trying to blow quietly her line to her in case she had forgotten the lines. But she hadn't forgotten the lines. She knew the lines. Something happened. Something happened. And silence happened. That's what happened. It's funny how long a silent minute can be. Minutes go by unnoticed, one after the other, and so soon a minute is an hour, and an hour is a day, and a day is a week, and on and on and on it goes until it's silent. And when it's silent, it's a different pace, especially in that setting. Now, I wasn't looking to create a traumatic event in this young person's life, and so I was pretty relaxed. I remained focused on her silence and wanted to give her the opportunity to decide what was next. Excuse me, I gotta turn my phone off. Speaking of silence. So, I waited until it was clear something else had to happen. And so breaking, all the conventions, I got up. I was in the front, and I got up, and I walked up on the stage with her, and I said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "We'll just start over." So we backed up, and we went back to the place where she made her entry. And the lines came, and the show went forward, and she did a great job. But those silent moments were etched into my mind and into my very being. That silence. That was a long silence. So when I was doing my silent preparation and thinking about this chat, I didn't think I was going to stay on silence. And I guess tomorrow I'll go more in the direction I wanted to go in. But the importance of taking some time in silence and letting it be silent. I don't know about you, but I was noticing on vacation this year, Laura and I went to a pretty remote area on a lake in Maine, and in the mornings, or especially early in the morning, we would ease the boat out into the lake, and there's nothing like the silence of a morning for me. It's not really silent. There's birds and little sounds, and sometimes loud sounds, but all from nature. But what I became aware of is that in my trying to get into experience silence, I have a ringing in my ears. It's been getting worse as I get older. And so I don't hear the silence that I used to hear. Now, I've been to have my ears checked. Thank you for all those who will take care of me. I know. I've had them checked, and basically, I think it goes back to being a child who was, grew up in the 60s, and earphones and the concerts and the loud music, and then I work with my hands. I work with machinery, and lots of those machines are very, very, very loud. And so, I have earplugs, which are strange because they block out what could be damaging levels of sound, and try to allow my ears to recover silence. Because if your ears are ringing and they're making a subtle noise, you don't hear it. You don't hear it at all when you're talking, and it does affect how much you hear when other people are talking to you. But you don't really hear that all that activity is going on in there until you're quiet. And then when you're quiet, you have to not think about it. So I guess maybe the conversation today is how important it is to enter into the quietness. Now, I know some of you live in a very quiet world. Very quiet. My dad will tell me sometimes that I don't understand how quiet his world is. And I think sometimes the quiet can be the noise that rushes by. Because just because it's quiet doesn't mean that you've entered into the quiet moment. Now, haven't I gotten mystical? My Buddhist friends tell me that I'm only just a quarter turn away from becoming Buddhist myself, which is flattering to me. But I do believe in these elements of life. Silence itself can be noise. Silence and the things that we do in the times of silence in our lives is not the same as that NPR radio host who invites her listeners to purposefully listen to the sounds of silence. Breathe in, breathe out. The psalmist says that in the complexity of our life, of our being. That there is a conversation that is due, a conversation that's overdue between us, the creature, and our Creator. God is a conversational God, listening, speaking, revealing. God's a conversational God. But the psalmist says that one of the signs of we do not live in a perfect world. The Hebrew culture especially rejected that we live in a perfect world. It's broken is the best word I come up with in our English to say. Life is marvelous. It's fabulous in all of its wonderful ways, but it's broken. It's broken. And when you run into the broken places, you have to pay attention. And one of the places it's broken, the psalmist says, is that there is a yearning, there's a voice inside of us that is yearning to usher forth words to the Creator, to God. But that the brokenness shows up, that it's too complex. Our requests and needs cannot be verbalized. And so, sometimes in waiting and in silence, we pray for God's help, our Creator's help, to take the deepest yearnings in our lives and to translate them, to offer them up in completing the communion, the conversation with God. That's what can happen in the silence. So maybe the pastor's chat ought to also be the pastor's quiet moment with you. So whatever's happening in your life, however fast it's whizzing by, or however slow it's moving, however noisy it is, or however quiet it is, my prayer for you today is that, like you've spent with me in this time, a few moments of silence on purpose, to listen to the sounds of the silence, to listen to the deeper yearnings of our own hearts and lives and minds, maybe finding our step one more way to peace, one more way to happiness, one more step toward happiness, one more step to a sense of oneness with God, togetherness with God. All these things can be grown in the garden of life with just a moment of silence, redirection, listening. So may God, in a moment of silence, meet you where you are. Let you know that you're heard. Create the overcoming of the gap and fill you with a sense, happy or sad, energized or exhausted, that you are one with God. You are going through this life together. That's what the pastor has to say to you today. That's what the pastor is saying to the pastor today. My prayers are with you, my friends, and they are for you. May God bless you, keep you, hold you, carry you, walk with you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hey Roger, it's Lou. I'm on my way. I thought we were going to start at 2:30 because I have this every day live conversation